Absolutely. Right, thank you, Shiur. I share the same welcome, Mr. Schmidt. And truth of the matter, I think it's one of the most beautiful things we see at Step It Up is we see the mothers participating with the daughters. Yes. And we've had things during the year we had mother-daughter cruises, we had a mother-daughter paint night, we had a mother-daughter, what do we have, sipping, challah baking. And it's just one of the most beautiful things that we do. And you're in California. Yes. So you couldn't have this. So, the fact you're here and you're joining with us, it's wonderful. Last night also that Shira made a beautiful Shabbat brachas last night for Janet and David. Shira, thank you very much for having us. It was beautiful. And it was also very nice to see Janet brought her mother. And her mother got up and spoke. And her mother just said how she feels that she's so connected to Step It Up and to the group and just so part of it. And that's exactly what we're trying to create. We're trying to create a world here where we're all together, we're all unified, and especially see mothers and daughters and parents and children. It's the most beautiful thing. I have to say, I thought Janet's mother was her sister. I did not know that was her mother. I thought it was her friend or sister, so I guess it's a compliment. A surprise to you that was her mother.
Rabbi Kraft, right before you start, we also do a special welcome back to Malka.
Oh, Malka, yes, sure.
She got married and moved to Eretz Israel, and now she's back temporarily. Or she's back for her right now, and we're really
Malka, welcome back. Welcome back. Good to have you back. Wow. Oh, good to see you. Welcome back. Okay, so let's begin, everybody. And first of all, before I begin, I want to just start by saying I want to tell you about the best conversation I ever had. So it was at my son's bar mitzvah, and after the bar mitzvah that night, my wife asked me, she said, who'd you speak to? And I told her I spoke to Joel. Joel's my mechutin, my older daughter's husband's father. I said, I had a great conversation with Joel. So my wife said, what did you say? What did he say? And I said, neither of us spoke. We didn't say a word to each other. We just gave each other a hug, and we looked each other in the eyes. And I'll tell you, a whole conversation happened. I told my wife, I knew what he was thinking. He knew what I was thinking. A whole conversation passed between us. And it was the deepest conversation of the night, and there were no words. And I knew exactly what he was telling me. He knew exactly what I was telling him. And, I was thinking about that there's a possibility to communicate from a very deep part of who we are when we get sensitive to it. They tell a very beautiful story that right now in Eretz Yisrael, one of the leading Gedolim is Rav Chaim Kamenetsky. And Rav Chaim, right now, is considered perhaps to be the Gadol Hador, the leader of the generation. So when he got married, going back many, many years ago, so he married the daughter of Rav Elyashiv. Elyashiv was also the Gadol Hador, leader of the generation. And so Rav Elyashiv traveled from Jerusalem to Bnei Brak to speak with the Chazon Ish. The Chazon Ish was another great luminary in Eretz Yisrael at the time. They're talking the early 1950s. And the story is that Rav Elyashiv traveled from Jerusalem. He came into the room where the Chazon Ish was sitting, and said they both sat there, and neither of them said a word for about 15 minutes. We just sat in silence. And apparently they say that Yerushalmis have perfected this idea of silence. It's a known thing. They've perfected it. He said they've sat there 15 minutes, didn't say a word. At the end of 15 minutes or 20 minutes, Rabbi Yashiv, I guess he was a little bit younger than Chazon Ish, so he said 3 words in Yiddish. He said, so no. He said, was mit dem Bacher? So he said, so no, so what's with the boy? And that was the whole conversation. They arranged the shidduch from there. And so the son of Rav Chaim described it. He said, listen, you have to understand. Don't think they weren't talking. They were talking plenty. They just didn't need to express it. But the words were flowing and the hearts were communicating. It's possible that a heart can be very sensitive, that there can be intense feeling beyond anything we could really imagine. And I just want to share just an idea with us today, a little bit from the Parsha, that I think speaks to this point. To get there, we just need a little bit of background. that we're in the Parsha, we just read last week, the Parsha was the Parsha of Korach. So Korach, we know, was the first cousin of Moshe Rabbeinu, and he fostered a rebellion against Moshe. And the rebellion had to do with a certain jealousy that he had, even though maybe it wasn't known to him. But the jealousy was that Aaron was appointed to be the Kohen Gadol, and Moshe was the king, so to speak. And he felt this was nepotism. He says, not fair. One family should have both the king and the Kohen Gadol. This isn't right. He wanted that position, and therefore, sometimes when we want something, we can build a whole philosophy for why what we're doing is right. And he fomented a rebellion against Moshe. And in this rebellion, we know that he's going to come to Moshe, and he's going to have certain complaints against him. But it's interesting, just to start it out, I'd like to just start, the way he started was like this. He started the rebellion by taking all of his 250 followers and dressing them up in blue, in techelis, in shirts of this techelis, which is called a very rich blue. Where's techelis today? Techelis is a blue that's formed from a certain dye, that's from a type of clam that exists in the Mediterranean Sea. That's the blue that's supposed to be in our tzitzit. We don't know where that clam is today, perhaps, so that's why we don't utilize it, but some people claim we do know. But it's a very beautiful color called techelis, techelet. So the reason why he did this was because in the Parsha just before the rebellion, Moshe had taught them about the mitzvah of tzitzis. So the mitzvah of tzitzis works like this. That we know that if we have a four-cornered garment, what do we have to do? We have to place fringes on the corners. That's a very deep idea in its own right. Whenever we have four corners in Judaism, there's always a mitzvah surrounding it. Because what does four corners always symbolize? Four corners always symbolize the idea of limitation. This is where it stops. Tzitzis says, no, it doesn't stop there. What you see with your eye is really not the reality. There's a whole spiritual world beyond that which you can see. Don't look at a corner and say that's where it ends. So tzitzis teaches this idea where you see a corner, no, you got to know there's more. And what do? We place tzitzis. Tzitzis comes from the word in Hebrew, latzitz. Latzitz means to sprout. Understand there's some things are sprouting beyond you. There's growth going on that you have to achieve and you can't even see. The way it works, it has to be two colors. It's 4 strands rolled over, so you have 8 threads hanging. 3 of them have to be 7 strands have to be white, and 1 strand has to be blue. And what we're supposed to do is supposed to take the blue and wrap it around the white. That's really the way the mitzvah is supposed to look. We don't do it that way today because we can't necessarily identify that particular clam from which we make that dye for the blue. So we don't do it. There are people in Eretz Yisrael who are doing it, and even in America who feel we do have that clam, and you see now people are wearing the blue on their tzitzis. I haven't yet done it just because I'm not sure 100%, though I'm very tempted because I see Rabbi Rosenberg does it and Rabbi Muscat does it, so I'm a little bit tempted myself, but I'm not 100% sure if it's the right thing. But it's interesting. Why did Hashem command that we should have these 2 colors working? 7 strands of white and 1 strand of blue. 1 strand of blue. So the way it works is like this. Well, first we always know the number 7. What does 7 always symbolize for us?
Nature.
The natural world. That we know that there are how many notes in the musical scale? Yep. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Right? Once you get the C, it's the 8th note. It's repeating itself. 7 notes in the musical scale. How many colors in the rainbow? Right? Roy, G, Biv, red, orange, yellow, blue, green, indigo, and violet. Right? So 7 always for us indicates the idea of structure in the physical world. Now it's interesting, we're supposed to have 7 strands representing, so to speak, this world. 7 of them have to be white. What does white always symbolize for us? Purity. Why? Why? Why does Akala wear white? Why do we wear white on Yom Kippur? Like, what's the vision of white? Of purity. True. Let me take it just a little bit deeper based on the idea of Rav Hirsch and the Maral. It says like this, that white, how do you say white in Hebrew? LaVon. Lamed Beit, what does that mean? Lev, heart. Interesting. The essence of white is LaVon. LaVon is an interesting color because really, when you look at white light, is it really white?
No.
What is it really?
Combination of all colors.
White, when you refract it through a prism, what do you detect? Well, you see a beautiful rainbow. You see Roy G. Biv. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. White says there's much more behind me. White says that which you see with the eye really only is the outer covering of deep, beautiful colors which is underneath. That for us is always the vision of something we call in Judaism emunah. Emunah means trust. Trusting Hashem. What does it mean to trust Hashem? Where you think that you think you see reality with your eye, or we think we understand a situation, or we understand that you don't understand. White says there's so much more behind the scenes that you know, and you have to trust that it's there. That's the vision of Amunah. Amunah is white. Trust is white. White says, I can't see it with my eye, so I have to go to a place that my eye can't detect. That's my heart. I'm going to have to let my heart go beyond my mind. I'm going to trust, just like the white light. When I look at that white light, it looks like white. Just put a prism on it, and what do we see? It's not white. It's so much more than white. It's a beautiful spectrum. It's a beautiful rainbow. So Amunah says the same language. Amunah says that which I see with my eye is not it. There's much more, but I'm not going to find it with my mind. I'm going to have to find it with a different part of myself, with my heart. So it's interesting. That's the idea of LaVon, white. That's interesting. When you spell it out, it goes even deeper. Lamed Beit means heart. The Nun Sofit at the end looks like this. It's the longest letter in the Hebrew language, and it extends almost indefinitely below the line. What's the vision of LaVon? Take your heart and extend it as far as it can go. That's emunah. Take your heart, take your trust, and let it go as deep as you can. That's what white symbolizes for us. So 7 tzitzis have to be what? They have to be white. Because we have to understand that in this world we have to have a foundation of LaVon. We have to have a foundation of white. We have to start with the premise that there's so much that our minds aren't going to comprehend in this world. There's so much about Hashem that we're not going to understand. And Hashem leaves it like Hashem wants it like that, as we've spoken about. Hashem needs it to be like that. Because really loving Hashem says I have to love Hashem where I don't understand Hashem. Otherwise I'm not loving Hashem, I'm loving me. And the same is true, we know, in relationships, in marriage, and it's the same concept. That we have to love our newly married couples. We'll tell you this is true, right? You have to love our spouses exactly where we don't understand them. And believe it, leave plenty of room to not understand them. Especially if you're a woman and he's a man, you're a man, she's a woman. There's plenty of room. But that's where love has to exist. Love has to live exactly where we don't understand, because then you're loving the other for whom the other is, and not your own perception of what you like. So Hashem is teaching us, number one, the foundation has to be white. It says, then once you've established that, take blue and wrap it around it as tight as you can. How do you say blue in Hebrew? Chochol. If you break up that word, it's really very fascinating. It's chochol is chav chet lamed, which is koach, the power, lamed. Lamed in Hebrew means study. Blue says koach lamed, chochol, study, use the mind, find Hashem intellectually. And that's why it says, the reason we put the blue on the tzitzis, because blue reminds us of the water, the ocean. You look at the ocean, you think about, oh, that's beautiful blue. You're supposed to look at the sky. The sky's also really beautifully blue. And then you think about the throne of Hashem, the Kisei HaKavod, it's also blue. So even the whole description there is saying, use your mind to think. That's chochol. And as Jews, we know that we're never exempt from using our minds. We have to have Amunah as the foundation, but we have to use our minds. So the koach of lamed, the intellectual part of ourself, which says find Hashem through your mind, is wrapped around the idea of Amunah, is wrapped around the beautiful threads of white. And that's the vision. And by the way, if you think about blue, I'll just say a little scientific fact. When you look at the ocean, is it really blue? No. It's like such a disappointment when you get close up. It's, or when you're flying in an airplane, what happened to that beautiful blue sky? So it seems that the way our eyes perceive color is when we look outward, light converges. This is the furthest that the eye is able to detect that convergence is the color blue. There's actually more behind blue. As we know, Roy G. Biv, blue, indigo, and violet is beyond. We can't detect indigo and violet with the naked eye. So when you're using the eye to look out deeply, to think, what do you see blue? You see blue. So blue is the idea of using the mind. White is the idea of emunah, the heart. And that's why, by the way, a kala wears white. A bride wears white. Why? Because she's going to the situation saying that our life together really has to be built on emunah. We have to trust Hashem and we have to trust each other. That's really what it is. That's we go into Yom Kippur with the same vision. Say, Hashem, I have to trust you. I have the relationship with you where I have to let my heart go there because I'm not going to grasp it intellectually fully. And that's a very beautiful a beautiful basis for everything, to trust and to build on that aspect of understanding that Hashem is so much more than we can understand, yet He loves us so much and we're willing to trust. Trusting is a very beautiful thing. Now, it's interesting, with this in mind, this concept of the whites and the blue, what happened? Korach, he dressed up all of his followers in blue, in the tchelis. And he turned to Moshe and he said to Moshe, you taught us the halacha that says that if you have 7 strands of white and you take 1 strand of blue, you've created kosher tzitzis. Well, supposing the whole garment is blue, do you still need that 1 strand? Do you hear his question? He dressed up his 250 followers in tchelis, in this blue garment. And he turns to Moshe and he says, Moshe, 1 little strand of blue can make the entire garment kosher, the whole white garment, whatever color it is, with the 7 strands of white. So supposing the whole garment is blue, do you still need that 1 blue thread? That was his question. And Moshe said, yes, you do. And he started laughing, and his followers started laughing. What was he saying to Moshe? What was he attacking him with? So number one, people want to say, sometimes when you mock something, when you make fun of something, it cheapens it. That's the danger. In Judaism, we like jokes. Jokes are good things. We like to be funny. It's good to be funny. But there are 2 types of jokes. There are jokes that expand the heart and make us alive. And there are jokes that destroy. They tear people down and make fun of things. He was making fun of it. How could it be? 1 blue thread can make the whole thing kosher? If the whole thing is blue, it must be kosher by itself. It doesn't need that blue thread. Moshe said that's not the way the system works. It doesn't work that way. Hashem gave a command. Have be 7 white and 1 blue. You need the blue thread. So the sources teach us, our deep rabbis talk about this, and they say, really what he was saying was something even deeper than that. He was saying to Moshe, if you can understand something intellectually, the blue, maybe that's enough. If your mind can perceive and your mind can understand, maybe that exempts you from the mitzvot. I get it intellectually. If I could bring my mind there, maybe that's the higher level. And Moshe turns back to him and says, no. You have to understand there's always going to be a place that the mind's not going to perceive, that we're not going to get it, that we're not going to understand. And we have to follow the Torah and its structure, even if it doesn't fully make sense. And trust has to be that I'm going to trust Hashem and say, it doesn't make sense because I can't understand it, not because it doesn't make sense. They tell a story, they say a story that these 2 Jews were traveling from Russia to America, and the way to America, they stop in Paris. And in Paris, they want to go to the Louvre, beautiful art gallery, if you've ever been there, and they want to see the Mona Lisa.
Tiny.
The Mona Lisa, what?
It's so tiny.
Mona Lisa, yeah, I saw it once. So the Mona Lisa is a brilliant, it's a Michelangelo. Who made the Mona Lisa? Michelangelo? Leonardo da Vinci. So it's a beautiful, beautiful painting. The brilliance of it is the eyes follow you. It's like a painting like no other painting. Whatever you look at the eyes seem to move with you. Extraordinary. So these 2 Russian Jews are looking at it, and one turns to the other and say, I don't know what the fuss is about this painting. I think it's ugly. Everybody talks about it like this was a waste of time. So his friend turns to him and says to him, I'll tell you something. For the last 500 years, the greatest artists, art critics, and basically the entire world has said about the Mona Lisa that it's a masterpiece. The Mona Lisa is not on trial. You are. It doesn't have to defend itself. You have to defend your inability to understand it. You have to try to understand what masters have said is great. So I always think it's a beautiful story because the Torah's not on trial either. Hashem's not on trial. If we don't understand something, it's not a fault in Hashem. It's a fault we don't understand it yet. That's all. It's understand it. We have to work hard to understand it. We have to learn. We have to read. We have to study. We have to speak to our rabbis, our teachers. And that's all. And we might reach a point where we don't understand. And that's okay too, because Hashem's mind is greater than our mind. Now, I bring this piece in because I really want to segue it into something else right now. The idea that really it's our hearts are where Amunah lives, have to be very sensitive. And the more sensitive they are, the more we can feel, the more we can just grasp things. And maybe, the more we can really experience the beauty of this world. There's a special blessing that we make, and it says that when the rabbis used to leave each other after learning together, they used to say a very beautiful phrase, and they used to say to each other that the one who gives life should continue to give you life. What does that mean? The one who gives you life should continue to give you life. I know they're alive. They're not concerned about sickness. The one who gives life should give you life. They're talking about something else. They're talking about there's living and there's living. There's living in this world and being alive to this world, alive to the nuances, alive to all of the pleasures, alive to the unbelievable majesty that God created and opportunity, and just the point where we're just like shaking. Or there's living in a way where we walk through life and our mind is on the next television show. Our mind is still in, that there's living and there's living. They're saying to each other, the one who gives life should allow you to really live in this world. I remember I had a Rebbe told me one time he ate lunch by his Rebbe, Shlomo Volba, in Yerushalayim, Al Shalom, and he said that, he asked him one time, I said, what was it like to have a meal with this great person, Shlomo Volba? So he said it was like an ordinary meal. We were sitting, we were talking. He said, but the best part was dessert. I said, really? What did his wife serve? He said, it was ice cream. I said, it must have been great. He said, it was regular ice cream. He said, the best part was to watch how Rav Volba ate the ice cream. He said he would put it on a spoon, and he would put it in his mouth, and he would let it sit there on his tongue, and he would savor it. And he would say, this is unbelievably delicious. And he would take another bite, and he would look at it, and he'd look at the color, and say, it's so wonderful. He'd take another. It took him 20 minutes to eat his ice cream. He said it was worth it just to watch the way he was so sensitive to the pleasures of this world. Because the reality is, the more our hearts are expanding in emunah, in trust, and the more our hearts are expanding in our connection to Hashem, really what happens is we become much more sensitive people in this world. We become more alive. Now, I'm going to suggest there's a downside to that, but it's not really a downside. Downside, perhaps, is that we feel things more deeper. A person who's very alive spiritually feels this world, feels the pleasures intensely, and feels pain intensely because they're alive. That's not necessarily a bad thing, though, because it means that they're really living. And there is pain in this world that we almost feel bad that we can't feel. I was just in Poland a few weeks ago, with the group. We spoke about it. And I think one of the things that people spoke about, I'm going again, by the way, 2 weeks. I can't believe I'm going again. I'm just, but it's people would say this. We had nighttime, we had processing sessions where we would talk and people would speak about their experience. And some people, a lot of students said this, mostly men, not as many women. And what they said was, I should be feeling more, but I'm not. And I understood that very well. I understood that. Because I feel the same way. Women, most of the girls didn't say that. Many men did say it. Many men. Not all. But I understand that. Because to be alive, you got to feel. And when that feeling seems to be, I can't get it. I can't feel it. It almost feels like something we're missing something. Why can't I touch inside of myself that part that wants to feel this and wants to cry and wants to express, the sadness of what we're witnessing and talking about and experiencing, and not to have it is almost like being cut off from life. I remember my Rosh Yeshiva, Zetzav of Hanik Levovitz, also the Rebbe of Shiur's father, and I remember how, when he would speak before Yom Kippur, he would start giving a talk, he would break down into tears, start crying. And it happened every year. The same words, same place. He would talk about himself and how he hasn't served us properly and how he's a failure. And and how we should understand them because his Rebbe died when he was young, and he would say those words every year at the same place. He would start crying. And I always felt this every year, that his heart was so alive that tears could just come. It's not easy to do. He would think certain ideas and tears would come. That's the indication of a very, very large spiritual person. Now, let me tell you what he said about Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe was accused by Korach's followers of many things. One was nepotism. Moshe, why did you take the kingship and you chose your brother Aaron to be the Kohen? But they also accused Moshe Rabbeinu of something else. And it's a very shocking accusation. It says in the Talmud, I'll tell you what he said. It says that they accused Moshe Rabbeinu of what? They suspected him of having an adulterous affair with all their wives. What type of accusation is that about Moshe Rabbeinu? It's almost like absurd. Like, why would he say such a thing? So different explanations what that means and why. One explanation is that they suspected him, like on a spiritual level, that he has too intimate a connection with Hashem, it's like it's taking away from them, and that another idea is that he's understands everybody so well, maybe understands their wives better than they understand their wives. Another explanation, and different ways he approached it. I've given some Shiur in the past, but those explanations aside, the simple language is, for some reason, they suspected him, who was actually a ridiculous in any way, but they were accusing him of that. And the Torah says, what was Moshe Rabbeinu's reaction to it? It says, "Vayishma Moshe yipol apanav." Moshe heard it, and he fell on his face. He fell down on the ground in distress. Just fell down. Why? He fell down. Why did he? Because out of the busha, out of the embarrassment. Because of the embarrassment, he felt this spurious, this ridiculous charge against him. He literally lost his strength and fainted on the ground. When he heard this charge that he suspected him of adultery with their wife, I think it was ridiculous. But the question is like this. You think about Moshe Rabbeinu. The accusation aside, we could talk about what that means and why they said it. But you think of Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu was the humblest of all men. See, there was Anav Mikol Adam. There was no one in human history as humble than him. What does it mean to be humble? To be humble means you have no exalted sense of your greatness. You know who you are. You know your strengths. You know what God gave you. You know that it's only a gift from Hashem. If Hashem had given you someone else these gifts, they might be greater. There's no exaggerated sense of self. He was an Anav. That's what it means. He was never pursuing glory in any means. It was thrust upon him. And yet what happened? He hears this terrible charge against him, and he literally faints on the ground. That's interesting. Why? Because he was so embarrassed by it. He felt so deeply the embarrassment and the shame. I don't know. We've all been embarrassed in our lives or felt shame. I don't think any of us have fallen on the ground. I don't think any of us have fallen on the ground and fainted. People get embarrassed. These people say accusations, but no one faints. No one falls down and just like in shock and just literally loses all of their might. And yet Moshe Rabbeinu does. So I heard my Rosh Yeshiva give a little talk on this, and he said something very interesting. The bigger a person is, the more they feel. The reason Moshe Rabbeinu is so intensely moved and shocked that he literally faints upon hearing such an accusation is because he's so spiritually developed, so spiritually alive. He's so spiritually aware and feeling everything in this world, by the way he eats ice cream, to the way he eats his watermelon, to the way he wakes up in the morning and looks at the sun rising and sees it. I have to make a blessing over it, like we do in the morning. To getting up in the morning and just, touching his spinal cord and saying, "Thank you, Hashem, Zokef Kefufib, I could stand and my eyes can see." So spiritually alive. What it means to be spiritually alive is you feel. You feel you're living. And part of living means you're going to feel the joys and you're going to feel the pain. but it's worth it because you're spiritually alive. And so as a result, what happens, Moshe Rabbeinu, he can't take it, and he faints, literally falls on the ground, which is unusual. You wouldn't expect that. You'd expect a great person to be impervious to the arrows of shame, or the arrows of an accusation. No, you're saying that about me. He feels it so deeply. And that's what it means to be spiritually alive in this world. You know, it says the same thing, by the way, it says by someone who's a Rasha, someone who's evil. Our sages say the opposite. What do they say? Rasha b'chayev choshev chameis. An evil person in his life is like he's dead. And listen to what our Talmud says, our rabbis say. He sees the sun shine every morning, and he doesn't make a blessing on it. Can you imagine that? A person wakes up every morning, and there's that beautiful sun rising over, giving light and warmth, perfectly calibrated, exactly the distance it needs to be from the earth, so the earth doesn't burn up or freeze over, in such magnificent glory. If you've ever been up early enough to see a sunrise, I'm occasionally up that early, not always. It's magnificent. And he doesn't make a blessing over it? How can I make a blessing over it? We make a blessing every morning over it. Yotzer, or that's the blessing we make before Shema Yisrael. And that's what we're supposed to be feeling when we make that blessing everything. We're supposed to be feeling, my gosh, it's so magnificent, so beautiful. Sometimes we are a little bit perfunctory in our blessings also. But that, an evil person, it says, the Talmud says, can you imagine such things? He's like a dead person. He wakes up every morning and doesn't make a blessing on the sun. He sees the sun set in the evening, and he doesn't say, Ma'ariv Aravim, oh Hashem, you create this enormous ball of energy, and now look at the way it just seems to set down to the horizon with all the magnificent colors. Make a blessing on it. It's so beautiful. It's so awe-inspiring. He doesn't make a blessing on it? Like what? We make a blessing every night in Ma'ariv. Ma'ariv Aravim, that's the blessing. On the setting of the sun, how magnificent it is, how beautiful it is. He eats and he drinks, and he doesn't stop to appreciate it. To say, Hashem, you created these things only to give me pleasure. You didn't have to create them. Hashem, maybe you owe me water because you created me. Maybe you owe me bread, you got to keep me alive. But you don't owe me chocolate. You don't owe me strawberries. You don't owe me blueberries. You don't owe me sushi. You don't owe that to me. You don't owe me coffee. Maybe you do. It's all because he loves us, that's all. So an evil person, he wakes up and he doesn't make a blessing over it. Oh, his heart is so thick. There's no pleasure. He's dead. And not because he's dead spiritually, it says. He's dead because he's not experiencing this world with all its magnificence and pleasures. That's death. So the vision of the Torah, and this is really what I'm trying just to bring out for us tonight a little bit. The vision of the Torah is really this vision where it really wants us to be alive in this world. Forget the next world for now. It's also important, but not for now. Hashem wants us to be awakened and alive in this world in every way. To let our hearts go to places that we couldn't have imagined. That's emunah. That's the white, that's the trust. To be able to sit and have a conversation and not even saying a word because we're so in tune with another's heart. Imagine such a beautiful thing. That was the conversation I had with my mechutin, my son-in-law's father. Rabbi Yashiv talking to the Chazon Ish, not speaking a word, but talking. Our hearts can be so attuned, we're so alive. We can watch a sunset and watch a sunrise and eat ice cream and just be so aware spiritually. Imagine such a life. That's what Hashem wants for us. He wants us to have this world. Forget the next world and the next world. But he wants us to have this world in such a beautiful, beautiful capacity. And Moshe Rabbeinu, when he hears this accusation against them that they're accusing him of Ashes Ish, of adultery, he can't take it because his heart is so spiritually alive. He's shocked. He feels the pain so deeply. Now, I get this question often, and I have to admit I get it more from our women students than our men. And the question often is people feeling very bad about themselves. That I've done something and feel guilt, regret, whatever it might be, and just feeling just so pained inside themselves. So I always respond with something I heard from my Rosh Yeshiva. And I think these words are so magical, so practical, and so helpful. I'll share them with you. I once asked this question to my Rosh Yeshiva, and I said to him, Rebbe, sometimes when we study Musar, when we study ethical works on self-growth, I said, I feel so bad about myself because I'm not there. So I remember him saying two things to me. He said, number one, he said, first of all, it's not so easy to feel bad. To feel bad is not such an easy place to get to. But number two, and this was more important, he said like this. He said the words, how good it can feel to feel so bad. How good it can feel to feel so bad. In other words, a person can feel pain for having done something wrong and being so bothered by that pain and so engrossed in that pain. And at the same time say, I feel so good that I can experience the pain. I'm a person capable of regret. I'm a person who wants to grow and be great. And as a result, I can feel pain for what I've done wrong. What a wonderful place to be. I can feel so good about feeling bad. Feel good about feeling bad. Don't let the pain overwhelm us and shock us and take us out of and discourage us. We utilize the pain to say, I can feel so good about feeling bad. I feel so good that I'm capable of having this pain. All of a sudden it changes the feeling. The feeling now becomes, wow, I'm alive. I can regret. I'm on a path that I want to get somewhere. I'm not insensate. I'm not dead in this world. I'm really moving, and that's why I feel bad. Feel good about feeling bad. And that's a wonderful feeling of living, of life. And again, I get this question more from women than from men. And the reason because Hashem gifted women with a chokhmas halev, binas halev, intuition of the heart, feeling, regish, which is a tremendous, wonderful gift. Men need to learn it more from women. But with feeling comes pain. But with feeling comes life. Hashem should bless us all with the ability to have life in this world, Hashem. Experience Hashem and each other.